The auctioneer's hammer fell like a judge's gavel. The woman in chains didn't flinch. Dust swirled through the makeshift platform outside Deadwood's largest saloon, carrying the stench of unwashed bodies and desperation. Iron shackles bit into scarred wrists as she stood motionless, eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the jeering crowd. Her face bore the marks of old violence, a twisted nose, puckered flesh along her jaw, hair shorn close like a convict's. The crowd called her beast, and she'd learned not to correct them. What am I bid for this one? The auctioneer's voice cracked like a whip. Strong as an ox, they say, good for heavy labor. Laughter rippled through the assembled men. Ranchers, drifters, claim jumpers, all drawn to Deadwood's monthly auction, where debts became flesh and flesh became coin. The woman's crimes were whispered. Horse theft, assault, running with Lakota war parties. True or not, the story stuck to her like prairie mud. A mountain man stepped forward from the crowd's edge. Jebediah Stone stood 6'4" in worn buckskin, beard streaked with premature gray from 3 winters trapping the Black Hills alone. His cabin sat 12 miles north where the creek bent around granite outcroppings, a place so remote even the Pony Express riders gave it wide berth. He'd come to town for supplies and ammunition, not human cargo. $20? Someone called. A stocky rancher with tobacco-stained teeth. She'll do for fence work. 25, another voice. My wife needs help with the hogs. More laughter. The woman's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Stone watched her face, seeing something the others missed. Beneath the scars and grime lay bone structure that spoke of breeding, education. Her posture remained straight despite the chains, chin lifted with quiet dignity. She'd been broken, but not bent. He'd seen that look before, and captured mustangs that would die before they'd truly submit. $50. Stone's voice cut through the crowd like an axe through kindling. Heads turned. The auctioneer squinted through cigar smoke. 50 from the mountain man. Anyone else? Silence stretched. 50 was good money, enough to feed a family through winter. The rancher spat and shook his head. Others melted back into the crowd like snow in spring. Going once. The woman's eyes found Stone's for the first time. Dark eyes, intelligent and wary. She was calculating, he realized, measuring him like he might measure a trap or a trail, looking for the angle, the weakness, the way out. Going twice. Stone nodded once, a promise or a threat, she couldn't tell which. Sold to Mr. Stone for $50. The hammer fell again. The woman's shoulders sagged just slightly, the only sign that some part of her had been hoping for a different outcome. An hour later, Stone led his new acquisition out of town on foot, her chains replaced with simple rope that bound her wrists but allowed her to walk freely. His horse carried supplies, flour, coffee, ammunition, a new plow blade that had cost him his last beaver pelts. Winter was coming early this year. He could smell it in the wind. They walked in silence for the first mile, boots crunching on frost-brittle grass. The woman moved with surprising grace, despite her torn dress and battered appearance. She favored her left leg slightly, an old injury that had healed crooked but hadn't slowed her down. "What's your name?" Stone asked as they crested a low hill. She didn't answer immediately. When she spoke, her voice was hoarse from disuse, but carried traces of Eastern education. "Does it matter? I need something to call you besides what they called you back there." Catherine Marsh." "Where are you from, Catherine Marsh?" "Boston, originally." She paused, then added with bitter humor, "Though I suspect that surprises you." It didn't, actually. The way she held herself, the careful pronunciation despite months of rough living, she'd been quality once. Stone had learned not to ask too many questions about what brought people west. The frontier was full of reinvention, voluntary and otherwise. Boston's a long way from Deadwood. Yes, it is. They walked another mile before she spoke again. What do you want from me? The question hung between them like gun smoke. Stone considered his words carefully. Winter's coming. My place needs work. Firewood, repairs, hunting, preserving meat. I work better with help. That's all? He stopped walking and turned to face her. Something in his expression made her take a half-step back, though the rope between them remained slack. Lady, I don't know what you've been through or what you think I am, but I paid good money because you looked like you had fight left in you. I need someone who won't fold when the snow gets deep and the supplies run low. If you can work, we'll get along fine. If you can't... He shrugged. Well, we'll find out. Catherine studied his face, searching for deception or cruelty. She found neither, which somehow made her more nervous than if she had. In her experience, men always wanted something beyond what they claimed. They reached Stone's cabin as the sun touched the western peaks. The structure was larger than she'd expected. Solid logs chinked with mud and moss, a stone chimney that looked professionally built, windows with actual glass. A well-constructed barn stood nearby, and she could see the outlines of a vegetable garden, now mostly harvested for winter. It's not much, Stone said, following her gaze, but it's tight against the weather. He untied her wrists without ceremony and stepped back, giving her space. Catherine rubbed her wrists where the rope had chafed, watching him warily. This was the moment when buyers typically revealed their true intentions. Instead, Stone walked to the cabin door and held it open. There's a room in back. It's got a bar on the door if you feel the need. Supper's in an hour. She stepped inside, blinking as her eyes adjusted to the dim interior. The main room was spartanly furnished but clean. A table, 2 chairs, shelves lined with books that surprised her. Practical titles mostly. Farming, blacksmithing, animal husbandry. But she spotted poetry too, and what looked like a volume of Shakespeare. You read? She asked. Long winters, Stone said simply. Not much else to do some nights. The back room was small but private, with a narrow bed and a chest for belongings. True to his word, there was a wooden bar that could be lowered across the door from the inside. Catherine ran her fingers along it, wondering if it was meant to keep others out or keep her in. Over the next days, they established a routine. Stone was as good as his word. He treated her like a hired hand, nothing more. They rose before dawn to tend the animals, worked through the day on winter preparations, ate simple meals in companionable silence. He never asked about her past, never pressed for conversation beyond what work required. Catherine found herself watching him when he wasn't looking. He moved with the economic grace of someone who'd learned to survive alone, wasting no motion, keeping always alert to his surroundings. His hands were scarred from years of rough work, but she noticed how gently he handled injured animals, how carefully he tended his small library. She began to let her guard down by degrees. The first week, she barred her door every night and slept with a kitchen knife under her pillow. By the second week, she left the bar raised, but kept the knife close. By the third, she realized she'd forgotten about the knife entirely. It was during the fourth week that the riders came. Catherine was splitting firewood behind the cabin when she heard horses approaching. 3 men riding hard from the south. She recognized the lead rider immediately, Marshal Tom Brennan, the man who'd arrested her in Deadwood. Behind him rode 2 deputies, both armed with rifles. She dropped the axe and ran for the cabin. Stone was inside, cleaning his hunting rifle at the kitchen table. He looked up as she burst through the door, took in her pale face and panicked breathing. "Trouble?" "Marshal, 3 men. They're looking for me." Stone stood slowly, rifle in his hands. "What did you do?" For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then the words tumbled out. "I killed a man. In Denver. He was hurting a child, a little girl. I tried to stop him and he came at me with a knife. I hit him with a poker and he..." She swallowed hard. "They said it was murder. Said a woman had no right to interfere." Stone's expression didn't change. "Was it murder?" "No." "But they'll hang me anyway." The sound of horses grew louder. Stone moved to the window, peered through the glass. 3 riders, as she'd said. The lead man wore a badge that caught the afternoon sun. "Get in the back room," Stone said quietly. "Bar the door. Whatever you hear, don't come out unless I tell you. They'll search. Go." Catherine hesitated, then obeyed. She'd barely gotten the bar in place when she heard the knock on the front door. "Stone? This is Marshal Brennan. We need to talk." Through the thin walls, she heard Stone open the door. "Marshal, what brings you up this way?" "Looking for a woman. Bought her at auction a few weeks back. Catherine Marsh. Goes by Beast sometimes. We got word she's wanted for murder down in Denver." "That's so?" "Killed a prominent businessman with a fireplace poker. Crushed his skull in. We're here to take her back for trial." Catherine pressed her ear to the wall, heart hammering. Stone's voice remained level, conversational. "Don't recall the name. What's she look like?" "Ugly as sin. Scarred up bad. Brown hair, medium height. You'd remember her if you saw her." A long pause, then, "Can't say I have. But you're welcome to look around." Catherine's blood turned to ice. He was going to let them search. Of course he was. Why would he risk himself for her? She'd been a fool to think otherwise. Heavy boots crossed the main room. The deputies were methodical, checking corners, moving furniture. One of them tried the door to her room. "Locked," he called. "Stone, what's in there?" "Storage mostly, winter supplies." "Mind if we take a look?" Another pause. Catherine closed her eyes, waiting for the inevitable. "Actually, Marshal, I do mind." The footsteps stopped. "Come again?" "I said I mind. This is my property." "You got a warrant?" "Don't need one for a fugitive search." "You do on private land unless you got reasonable cause. And you just said you don't know where she is?" The silence stretched until Catherine thought she might scream. Finally, Brennan spoke again, his voice colder now. "Stone, we can do this easy or hard. Your choice." "I'm choosing the law, Marshal. Same as you should be. The law says I can search wherever I damn well please." "No, sir, it doesn't. Territorial Statute 47B requires a warrant or immediate threat. Unless you're saying I'm harboring a dangerous fugitive. Are you? If I was, wouldn't I be obligated to turn her over? Being a law-abiding citizen and all?" Catherine could practically hear Brennan's teeth grinding. Stone was playing a dangerous game, using legal technicalities against a man with a badge and 2 armed deputies. But he was doing it for her. "We'll be back," Brennan said finally. "With paper. I'll be here." The boots retreated. Catherine heard the door close, then the sound of horses riding away. She waited 5 minutes before lifting the bar. Stone sat at his table, rifle across his knees, staring out the window. He didn't look at her when she emerged. "They'll be back," she said quietly. "Yeah." "With a warrant?" "Probably." "Why?" The word came out smaller than she'd intended. "Why did you—" Now he looked at her. "You killed a man who was hurting a child?" "Yes." "Then you did what needed doing." Catherine felt something break loose in her chest, a knot of fear and shame she'd carried for months. "They said I had no right, that it wasn't my place." They were wrong. 2 words, simple as sunrise. But they hit her like absolution. That night, they talked until dawn. Catherine told him about her life in Boston. Daughter of a minister, trained as a teacher, married to a banker who died of consumption. About the slow journey west, searching for something she couldn't name. About the night in Denver when she'd heard a child's screams from the hotel room next door and kicked in the door to find a drunken businessman forcing himself on a girl who couldn't have been more than 12. "I didn't mean to kill him," she said. "I just wanted him to stop. But when he came at me with that knife—" "You protected yourself and the child," Stone said. "That's not murder." "The law says different. The law's written by men like him. Doesn't make it right." Stone told her about his own past. A failed ranch in Kansas, a wife who died in childbirth along with their son, the years of wandering that had led him to this remote cabin. About learning to live with ghosts, about the strange peace that came from solitude. "You thinking of running?" he asked as dawn light crept through the windows. Catherine considered it. "Where would I go? They'll hunt me from here to California." "Not if you're dead." She stared at him. "What?" "Fire. Happens all the time in these hills. Cabin burns, bodies burn with it. Hard to identify what's left." "You'd do that? Risk everything?" "Not much to risk anymore." They spent the day preparing. Stone gathered dry kindling and coal oil while Catherine selected items to save. His books, a few tools, the photograph of his dead wife he thought she hadn't noticed. They buried everything in a cache near the creek, marked with stones that looked natural but would guide them back. The marshals returned 2 days later with papers and reinforcements. 6 men this time, including a federal deputy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Catherine watched from the hillside as they surrounded the cabin, called for Stone to come out peacefully. He emerged with his hands visible but not raised, playing the part of a confused hermit. "Morning, Marshal. You're back sooner than I expected." "We got our warrant, Stone. And word from town that you bought a woman matching our fugitive's description." "Did I? Memory's not what it used to be." Brennan's face reddened. "Don't play games. Where is she?" "Where's who?" "Catherine Marsh, the murderer." Stone scratched his beard thoughtfully. "Oh, her. She's dead." The words hit the assembled lawmen like a slap. Brennan stepped forward, hand on his gun. "Dead how?" "Fever took her 3 nights ago. Buried her up the hill." "Show us." Stone led them to a mound of fresh earth he'd prepared, complete with a crude wooden cross. Catherine's dress, the torn thing she'd worn from town, was buried beneath, along with some animal bones that might pass for human remains if no one looked too close. "She was sick when I bought her," Stone said. "Got worse fast. Probably consumption. Nothing I could do." The federal deputy knelt by the grave, examining the disturbed earth. "Looks fresh. Like I said, 3 nights." Brennan wasn't buying it. "Dig it up." "Marshal," the federal man said quietly, "if she's dead, I want to see the body." "Sir, with respect, if it's consumption and she's been buried 3 days." The deputy shook his head. Disease could still be active, and the condition of the remains. It was a calculated risk, banking on the marshal's fear of infection and their squeamishness about disinterring a corpse. For long moments, the outcome balanced on a knife's edge. Finally, Brennan spat in the dirt. Damn waste of time. They searched the cabin anyway, finding nothing but the possessions of a man living alone. Stone answered their questions with the patient air of someone humoring officials who'd overstepped their authority. Yes, he'd bought the woman. No, he hadn't known she was wanted. Yes, he was sure she was dead. He'd buried her himself. After they left, Catherine waited until nightfall before returning to the cabin. Stone was burning papers in the fireplace, legal documents, the bill of sale from her auction, anything that connected him to her purchase. "They believed you," she said, "for now, but they'll be watching." What happens now? Stone looked at her as if the answer should be obvious. Now you're dead. Catherine Marsh died of fever and got buried on a hillside. Question is, who are you going to be instead? They talked through the night again, planning a new life for a dead woman. She would be Mary Stone, Jebediah's cousin from back east, come west for her health. A widow herself, respectable but with enough tragedy in her past to explain her reticence about details. People will talk, she warned. Let them. By spring, you'll just be part of the landscape. The transformation took months. Catherine, Mary now, let her hair grow and darkened it with walnut hulls. The scars on her face faded with time and better nutrition. She learned to move differently, speak differently, carry herself with the confidence of a woman who belonged rather than one who was running. Stone taught her to hunt and trap, to read weather signs and animal tracks. She taught him to cook meals that went beyond beans and hardtack, to darn socks properly, to appreciate poetry beyond the purely practical. They worked together through the winter. Two solitary people learning to share space without stepping on each other's solitude. The change was gradual, almost imperceptible. A hand brushed while passing a tool. A moment of shared laughter over some small absurdity. The way her breath caught when he smiled, the way his eyes lingered when she wasn't looking. Spring brought visitors, trappers heading north, a circuit preacher, even a few settlers considering the valley for homesteads. Mary Stone was polite but reserved, playing her part perfectly. The story held. She was accepted as Jeb's cousin without question. It was during a May thunderstorm that everything changed. Lightning struck a pine near the cabin, splitting it like kindling and starting a grass fire. They fought it together for hours, beating flames with wet blankets, digging fire breaks, saving their home and animals by the narrowest of margins. Exhausted, smoke-blackened, they collapsed by the creek afterward. Mary was washing soot from her face when she noticed Stone watching her with an expression she'd never seen before. "What?" she asked. "I was thinking about that day, when you asked what I wanted from you." "And?" I lied. His voice was rough from smoke and something else. "I wanted you to stay. I wanted not to be alone anymore. I wanted..." He stopped, looked away. "I wanted someone to choose this place, choose me." Mary set down the wet cloth, turned to face him fully. "I did choose." "You ran out of other options?" "No." She touched his face, fingers tracing the line of his beard. "I had options. I could have run that first night. Could have stolen your horse and been in Canada before you woke up. I stayed because I wanted to stay." "Why?" "Because you saw me. Not the beast, not the murderer, not the damaged goods. You saw Catherine Marsh, and you decided she was worth $50 and a place at your table. Mary, my name is Catherine. She said it firmly, reclaiming something she'd thought lost forever. Mary Stone is who I am now, but Catherine Marsh is who you saved, who you chose when everyone else saw only scars and shame. He kissed her then, gentle as a whisper, tasting of smoke and rain and promises. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. I choose you too, she said. They were married by the circuit preacher in June, with 2 passing trappers as witnesses. Mary Stone wed Jebediah Stone in a ceremony witnessed by mountains and sky, with rings carved from pine knots and vows spoken in voices steady as granite. The Marshalls never came back. Catherine Marsh was dead and buried, forgotten by all but those who'd loved her enough to kill her gently and birth her again as someone new. Mary Stone lived quietly and well, respected by neighbors who valued competence over beauty, character over appearance. Years later, when travelers asked about the scar-faced woman who'd once been auctioned in Deadwood, old-timers would shake their heads. The Beast? Oh, she died long ago. Fever, I think. Shame, too. Heard tell she wasn't as bad as folks made out. They'd look thoughtful then, adding, funny thing, though. Right around that time, Jeb Stone's luck seemed to change. Found himself a wife somehow, a real lady from back east. Makes you wonder about fate, doesn't it? Mary would smile when she heard such stories, touching the simple pine ring on her finger. She'd been chosen, claimed, and reborn. The Beast was dead and buried on a hillside. But Catherine lived on in Mary's laugh, in the gentle strength of her hands, in the way she stood beside her husband as they watched the sunset paint their valley gold. In the end, that was worth more than all the gold in the Black Hills. A place to belong, a name to answer to, and someone who'd chosen to see the woman beneath the scars. She'd been called Beast for so long, she'd almost forgotten she was human. Jebediah Stone had reminded her, and in return, she'd reminded him that even the loneliest mountain could bloom with the right tending. The wind whispered through the pines as evening fell, carrying the scent of growing things and the promise of tomorrow. In the distance, a wolf howled, not in loneliness, but in recognition of its pack. Mary Stone smiled and called her husband in for supper, knowing that some stories end not with death or departure, but with the simple miracle of being home. Don't forget to subscribe and consider giving a like to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to us.